Hi everyone, today I am going to show you how to wool applique using freezer paper. I'm going to start with going over a list of items that you need. The first item that you need is freezer paper. It is something that you can purchase in the grocery store in the kitchen aisle. It's just a box of freezer paper on a roll, and then I take it and cut it into smaller pieces that I need. You need a pair of paper scissors. You need a pair of good, sharp fabric scissors. I know sometimes people think these are a little bit expensive. They probably run around $30. You absolutely need them. You're really going to struggle if you try to cut fabric or wool with a pair of regular scissors. You need a good sharp needle. I am using a size 22 chenille needle here. You need some thread. I am using wool thread. You can also use cotton. You need a good sharp pencil and either a stapler or pins. You don't really need both. I will talk about the difference between them later on in the video. And then you need your project. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I do my patterns. Many different designers do them differently. I give you a sheet that is labeled with each piece on how it should be laid out, and then I give you all the pieces laid out and labeled. This is what you'll be tracing. You can also run this through a printer if needed. And I give you a sheet that has them reversed as well if you decided to do fusible. So in my pattern, those are the sheets that you would get. So we'll start with the pattern here, and I'm going to take my piece of freezer paper and my pencil, and I'm going to lay it over top with the shiny side of the freezer paper down. So I'm tracing on the dull side, and I'm just going to trace the shape and make sure that I label it. So on this pattern piece, the label is B. So I will add that B on there. And you will just trace all of the shapes on the paper. Then you take your paper scissors and cut right along the traced edge. Once you have this cut out, you are going to take your piece of wool that you're using for the applique and find the side that you like better. There's not necessarily a right or wrong side, but like I'll take this background piece. This has some texture and movement here. This does not have as much. So you need to find where you like the piece to be. Do you want a bunch of different shades in there? Do you want it all real dark, all real light? And you place this on the right side. So this will be the piece that will go on your finished project. And you iron that down for about 5 to 8 seconds, constantly moving the iron. I ironed a few pieces ahead because I tried to iron with the camera and the heat was actually just making the camera really fogged up. So these are pieces that I have pre-ironed, and you can see I can like move it a little bit and they kind of stick pretty well. If they have not stuck like this, then you need to iron a little bit longer. Now you're going to take your good sharp scissors and cut right along the edge of the paper and cut the shapes out. When you're laying the pieces down, I usually do all of the pieces of one color at the same time and try to kind of nest them all together. So then once we have a couple shapes cut out, you go back and reference your pattern on where the pieces are supposed to be. So I'm actually working on the border of my next project here. So this is the border piece. So I'm going to lay a piece out here and take the freezer paper off. And then I will lay the next one down over here. Like that. So they're kind of all facing the center. And then you take your stapler. And I just put a couple staples. You want them to be at least 1/4 of an inch from the edge so that you have room to stitch. I do a lot of stapling, so I actually ended up buying a longer stapler so that I can fit my projects all the way in here and get towards the center, but a regular household stapler will work, at least to begin with. So once you have your pieces stapled, I tend to staple as much of the project as I can before I start, because I like the whole thing laid out. So I've actually stapled all of these pieces down before I started stitching. Then once you've done that, you take your matching thread. So in this case, I would actually use this orange thread. I'm going to use white so that it stands out on the video so you can see it better. You cut a piece of thread that is about 18 to 20 inches long. You get your needle. Again, I'm using a size 22 chenille. I do think needles are a little bit of a personal preference, but a chenille needle is a good place to start. And then I tie a knot in the end. I come up from the back of my work. So you never want to start right at a point. It seems like a common place that people want to start to kind of go around and finish the shape. You actually want to start along the side here so that when you get to the edge, you have a little bit more room to work. So I'm going to come up right on the edge here in the applique piece. I'm going to bring the thread all the way through, and then the knot stops it. I'm going to go straight out into the background and come up at a 45-degree angle. So you want the stitches to be about 1/8 of an inch wide and 1/8 of an inch apart. So you're going to go out to the background and come up at a 45-degree angle, and that gives you a nice even stitch. And then I'm just going to take a couple stitches here and then show you what to do when you get to the corner. So a heart is actually a really good shape to start with if you just wanted to do a little test piece, because it has an inside curve, it has an outside curve, it has a sharp point at the bottom. So now when you get to the corner, what I actually do is take one stitch in the corner and kind of like give a tiny little tug and go down right at the bottom to keep that point sharp and defined. When you have a matching orange thread, you'll never see that stitch. And then I kind of just turn my project and continue on. And then once you get all the way around, you're just going to go to the back and tie another little knot, and you are finished with your first applique. So there's the heart. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm just trying to think real quick. I don't think I did. So the one thing I was going to show you is the pins. So some people don't like to staple. If you want to use pins instead, one thing that I sort of recommend doing is taking it and actually pinning from the back, coming up from the back and then going back down so that the sharp point of the needle and the head of the needle are on the back of your work. That way you don't get your thread caught as easily. You do need to be careful that you don't stab yourself with the edge of the needle here because you can't see it, but it's much easier to work without having this constantly get caught on edges of pins. So I think that's a good thing to do if you want to use pins. Otherwise, you would just put a couple pins and do the same stitching. So thank you for watching.